Happy Sunday morning. Welcome to my little episode here that we have for this week's podcast, looking back at the history of gaming. So, for anybody coming in new on this, I've been going through the years and just talking about what happened, some of the games on there, any major events, revelations that happened within the video game industry and all. And so for this episode, we're up to 1984. Now, I started in 1980, and as I've explained before, it's just mainly last year I was born. And it's also from when I feel like I have a decent enough understanding of what happened in the video game industry, where if I start going further back in the 70s and all, it just starts getting a little hazy. And I mean, I'm sure I can look it up and all that, but I just feel like I just don't have a whole lot of insight. And not that a lot of important things didn't happen back then. It's just I just feel like 1980 was a good starting point. Maybe someday I'll go back and sort of recap what happened in the 70s, but for right now, we started off in the 80s. But before we get into all that, wanted to touch base a little bit to sort of recap on the games that I played from the Roulette of Gaming last week. So I made a video of them where I played these three games for about half an hour each and all, and that was actually pretty fun. I enjoyed doing that. I'm going to try to do that again this week. We'll just kind of see what happens. And because this week, actually, another thing that I did want to make mention real quick, because it's probably going to be taking up some of my video game time, is today is the 28th anniversary of the North American release of Final Fantasy VII, which Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game of all time. So I wanted to kind of get into the game again, play its. I think I'm going to play the modded version from the Seventh Heaven mods, and so just wanted to give that game some love, just because it's a game I love revisiting and all that, and to start sort of preparing myself right enough for what I feel is going to be the inevitable announcement of Final Fantasy Remake Part 3, which should happen. My guess on that, my guess is, so there's the Xbox and the Nintendo Switch versions that are coming out for Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is great. I'm glad that those player bases are going to get experience this game. And so I think they just said in the winter of 2025. So, excuse me, my thought is going to be December then is when they're going to come out. My thought, and this is really based on nothing, just my thought, is that I feel like they want to get those versions out before they start announcing Part 3. So if it is going to get announced, they would release those games first. I don't think they've announced release dates yet. I know that they let some people play it at, I think, PAX West, at least the Switch version. I saw a video of it. But my thought is that they want to get those versions released first, and then after that, they'll make an announcement sometime later. So let's just say if it comes out in early December, and then the Game Awards are, mid-December or so? That's my thought, and maybe at the Game Awards they would have made an announcement, but I don't know. If it seems like it would seem weird if they announced it before they announced the Switch and Xbox versions. But again, that's just my speculation based on really nothing. But either way, starting to get a little hype for that. That's been a game that I feel like I just need to live through this whole trilogy of a remake and all. Just again, Final Fantasy VII is such an important game to me. At some point, as we start getting the dates on when it's coming out and all that, I'm going to start making some episodes about that just to sort of build up the hype. And yeah, so that's the game I'm going to gush about and all. And, just because I just love it so much. And it just, in a weird way, it kind of calms me talking about Final Fantasy VII. Not that I don't have criticisms against the game. I definitely do. It's just, the game is just something else for me. But either way. Still going back to the Relay of Gaming, I'll see what we have as far as for this week's picks, and if it's especially if it's things I haven't really played, I'm going to try to still see if I can do another episode where I play them each for at least another half hour on my YouTube channel. And I just felt it was pretty fun doing it that way. But yeah, to recap really quick. So the first game that I played last week on that was RoboCop Rogue City, and that game's fun. I do like that game. I put it down as the first-person shooter that I do want to play next. So if I do play first person shooter, right, that's the game that I'm gonna want to go through because I really enjoyed the bit that I've played of it, and it's something that I would still want to keep going through, and especially because the DLC that came out earlier this year, I believe, has been getting really good reviews. I believe it's called like Unfinished Business or something like that. So, bravo to this team that they seem to be a fairly small team, I guess considered like a double A team, and that's they're they're doing good because I did find out that they were the developer that did the Terminator Resistance game, which I really enjoyed that game as well too. So I'm hoping that they can find continued success and I don't know, do like Aliens. I think that'd be a good one because I feel like we need a really, really good Aliens first-person shooter. There's been some okay ones out there and all, but I feel like we really need a really good one that kind of ties to the movies too, also. Because like we had Alien Isolation, which is really good as far as like kind of giving you the along the lines more of like part Alien, the first Alien movie. But I feel like we need a really kick-ass Aliens movie, more action-oriented, and maybe this is the team to do it. I don't know, but. Either way, I'm going to talk a little bit about AAA, though, or I'm sorry, AA game studios and some of that stuff here, and when I talk a little bit about modern stuff. But next up, though, on the games that I played, though, last week was Pikmin for the GameCube. Well, I played an emulated version of it, but originally on the GameCube. And yeah, that's another really fun little sort of puzzle adventure game, I guess, whatever you want to classify it as. It's very charming, very cute, very calming too. When I was playing the game, it was just very soothing almost. And the puzzles and all seem a little challenging, but the graphics, the mechanics to it, and all that just has a very sort of calming effect almost that it just seems like a good game to sort of tease your brain a little bit and all with some puzzles and all, but at the same time where you're not like where it's not like super stressful. Now I say that only having played half an hour. For all I know, the game's puzzles gets really aggressively relentless and all that, so I have no idea, but the little bit that I played of it seemed pretty cool. And that was for the first part. I know there's four now, but that's just a little bit that I played of the first part. And so for the third one that I played was Golden Sun on the Game Boy, but I played it on the Nintendo Switch Online service. And yeah, great RPG. I mean, so far what I played of it, I really like it. It's definitely an RPG, right, that I would want to get into. Again, because I'm going to probably be playing Final Fantasy VII. I'm not going to put that one into the rotation, but I think I do want to try to play that one here soon because it did seem definitely fun. Um, but yeah, so that's what I got on those games there. And if you did want to watch anything of what I played through it'll be up on my YouTube channel at Arcade Amigo. It's just the channel that I made. I don't even know if, um, I mean, I'll keep it. I just don't know if that's the route I want to go, I guess, with a YouTube. I'm experimenting right now. And honestly, I'm going in this all kind of blind, but it's on there if you wanted to watch it. Let's see. Okay, so let's do for the role of gaming here. Okay, so let's pick a number. Let's see. Okay, so I got 842. Let's see what that brings up. All right, sorry if there was an awkward little pause there. I had to pause it for a bit. My daughter was knocking on the door. She's so cute. She's like, Daddy, can I want to get crayons for a rainbow heart for mommy, which is so cute. She's not much of a colorer or a drawer, but so this actually kind of surprised me. She's starting to take a little bit of interest in that, so that's good. But let's see, but we got 842. So what does this bring up? Rygar. Okay. This is good. Okay. And up next.
I really don't.
442. See, that brings up. And if you heard a little voice earlier, I accidentally clicked on a YouTube video. Okay, 442. Grand Theft Auto 4. Okay. That is good. Okay, for the last one, 968. And that is going to be Star Wars Rogue Squadron. Okay. Interesting selection. Couldn't be more varied. Okay, so Rygar. So this was the Nintendo version. So a little bit of history on Rygar. I don't have a whole lot of history with this Nintendo one, but I can tell you at least a little bit about some of the releases and all that. So Rygar originally, I'm pretty sure it came out first in the arcade. It's a game from Tecmo, and so you're this some kind of a warrior adventure, or whatever. And the interesting thing about this game was his choice of weapon, which was a disc armor. Now I think back then, because your game was going to be, because of the limited technology we had and the genres that we had and all that, it was either going to be a certain kind of game, right? So, for example, like, a side scroller, and there was only so much you can do with a side scroller. So I think back then they were trying to differentiate themselves from other games. And so with this game here, you have what's called a disc armor. And so with this disc armor, you just sort of like lunge it out, and as you're attacking your enemies. Now, the arcade version, I've seen it before. I might have played it at some point back in the day, but the one that I know I played at some extent, I want to say maybe re-rented it once back then with my friend that had the Nintendo. But that's the one that I'm a little bit more familiar with and that I've played more as an adult. And it's, with like a lot of Nintendo games back then that were based off of arcade hits, it's different. It's still, more or less the same concept. It's a side scroller. You still have your disc armor weapon. And what I recall about it, that it's pretty hard. It's one of those Nintendo hard games. And there's like these rolling like worms. They look like those, what are they called that sometimes you find in your lawn? Those grub worms or whatever they are. But I just remember they just keep coming after you as you're going through this first stage. But the first stage is kind of cool because you have looks like a sunset in the background and all. And yeah, it's a hard game. But it's definitely one of the better like action adventure games from back then. Kind of in lines with things like, another favorite of mine, Foxanadu, and also like Iron Sword, Wizards and Warriors, like, along those lines there. That's kind of what it reminds me of. But yeah, it's a pretty fun game. Maybe I'll give it a shot this week. I will, if I end up playing. And I know I have access to the Nintendo one. I think it's on the Nintendo Switch Online service. If not, I have other ways to play it. And maybe I'll check out the arcade version along with it as well too. But yeah, Rygar, it's one of those hard Nintendo games, but it's one that was one of the more fondly remembered action adventure games from back in the day. And eventually it did spawn I guess you can say like a sequel of sorts, I guess, on the PlayStation 2, which is actually a really great game as well too. But yeah, we'll check out Rygar. And okay, but the next game up is Grand Theft Auto 4. Here's a game I haven't really... well, I played it a little bit. I made, again, on my little YouTube channel, I played it for a little bit as I was talking about the Xbox 360. And so it was just one of the games that I was showing on there. So, but as far as like actually dedicating some time to really play it and all, I haven't really done that since back when it first came out back in 2008. That was another pretty decent year for gaming. We had a lot of good games in 2008, like Grand Theft Auto 4, Gears of War 2, Dead Space, Fallout 3. And those are just some quick games, right, that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there was other cool stuff and all, but But anyways, yeah, did I say Metal Gear Solid 4? Yeah. But yeah, anyways, Grand Theft Auto 4, great game. It's I feel like I don't know. I could be wrong. I guess I love the Grand Theft Auto games. I think they're great. I'm looking forward to Part 6. I'm not like foaming at the mouth for it, but I am pretty excited about it. I'm sure it'll be a great adventure. I'm hoping so. Anyways, I hope it doesn't get too. I mean, I've always liked the Grand Theft Auto games because I mean they do tend to push the envelope as far as like controversies and all. That's kind of why I like it. So I hope it doesn't get too sanitized. But we'll see. But if anything, the game seems like it's going to be a technical showpiece for just what video games can be. I mean, the budget in this game is insane. But anyways, we're not talking about Grand Theft Auto 6 right now. Grand Theft Auto 4. From what it's, again, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I do like him. And for this one here, I really liked it. Like when I was first playing it, I mean, it was a big deal when Grand Theft Auto 4 came out, right? And all it was because the Grand Theft Auto games on the PlayStation 2 really set a certain standard, and so people were really anticipating Part 4, which is going to be the first one for the seventh generation. And when it came out, yeah, people loved it, right? And all it seems like it was really popular. It was getting really good reviews, sold really well. I think it's one of the higher rated games on Metacritic also as well, too, just overall. And it came out on the Xbox 360, so that was kind of a big deal also, right? That it was, not just on the PlayStation machines. And yeah, it was good. But then it seems like as the years have gone on, especially since Part 5 came out, it seems like it's one of the more lesser talked about Grand Theft Auto games. That's just the feel that I get. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. So, if there's different opinions on that, definitely let me know. I'm kind of curious, but that's just what it seems like. But I really like it, though. I enjoyed the story to it a lot. I think I prefer the story over this one than Part 5. It's a little bit more darker in a sense. I really like Nico Bellic's character. He's a little bit more stoic, a little bit more, well, maybe not stoic, but just a little bit more grounded, I guess. You can kind of feel his plight a little bit more. At least I felt it a little bit more relatable in some senses than other characters where they were just a little bit more over the top. And I mean, it still has some of that silly Grand Theft Auto humor, like, his cousin Roman. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty impressive seeing it back then, right? With these, with the new graphics and all, they were quite an improvement from the PlayStation 2 versions. And a lot of cool things to do. And it really made the world feel very immersive, where I mean, you really felt like you were there, right, so to speak, and all. Because again, once we started getting into the seventh generation, things were just getting much more realistic and all that, for better or worse, right, and all. I know sometimes I feel like that could have maybe steered us in a direction that maybe we didn't want to go, but for what it is, the experience of playing a game like that back then, when all was, you definitely felt like that this game was made of money, but they put it to good use, because there's a lot of cool detail in it as you're kind of just walking around the city or driving or whatever. All the different channels that you can listen to in the car, all the different dialogue in the game, just the way you can interact with the characters, all the different varied mission structures and all that, the detail in the graphics at the time, which is really impressive. And yeah, just a great game. It really is a great game that I feel like has kind of gone under the radar a bit for some people. And that could be also that, I mean, you can play it backwards compatible on the Xbox Series X, which is great because it actually bumps it up to 60 frames per second. So it looks pretty nice now. But other than that, I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like it doesn't get too much attention. But I don't know, that's just me. But yeah, great game. Just two things that sort of annoy me about it. And one of them, it's the way Nico walks. He kind of walks with like this, I don't know, kind of like almost like he's leaning left to right a little too hard. And it makes it a little weird when you're controlling it. Not that big of a deal, but I just felt like they got it a lot better in Part 5. I know, something as simple as that. But in an open world game where I mean, you're driving a lot in this game and all that, right? But also as you're walking, it just feels a little clunky, I guess. But other than that, though, I really like that they gave that now you have a cover mechanic on it, right? As you're, when you're in a shootout. So that, I'm glad that they added that. But yeah, just a little bit of a complaint there on that. And then also the other thing too is, I mean, I don't mind it too much, but I know it's been meme to hell now. Is the whole, hey Roman, or hey Nico, let's go bowling. Did get a little annoying, but again, just not that big of a deal. But yeah, Grand Theft Auto 4. I mean, it's great. It's I always like listening to that. Oh, what was it? European almost like rap channel. I just felt like it went so well with the character and all. And oh, and then one of the missions that I absolutely loved in this, just because I'm a huge fan of the movie Heat. They did a mission they really paid homage to that scene where there's like the bank robbery shootout. That was pretty amazing. And I had heard about it that they did a mission like that in the game before, prior to me playing the game. So when I was looking forward to it, and you have to get a little ways into the game to actually get to that scene, but it's pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, it's the way they did that mission there was really great. And yeah, a lot of the missions are really fun in it, as you start getting later on in the game. And I did beat it. It did take me a little bit to beat it, but it's I beat most of the Grand Theft Auto games except for San Andreas. But yeah, it did take me a while to beat, but it is one that I beat. And I remember I enjoyed my experience with it all the way through. I don't quite recall like a really frustrating mission. Like some of the other ones have like certain frustrating missions, right? Like all you had to do was stop the train, CJ, or whatever that mission is in San Andreas, or the remote controlled helicopter scene in Vice City where you're trying to blow up that building. I can't quite recall if there was one that was really frustrating in Grand Theft Auto 4. I do remember being stuck on some missions, and it took me a while to get through them, but I don't remember being overly frustrated. But yeah, either way, great cast of characters. Aside from my little nitpick on the walking animation, the game mechanics are really expanded on. Just the way you select your weapons, the cover-based shooting now that you can do on it and all, it was really improved. And yeah, I like it. Nico Bellic, probably one of my more favorite protagonists too. Also, yeah, great game. I really enjoyed Grand Theft Auto 4. But then the third game here is Star Wars Rogue Squadron. I don't have a lot of experience with this game. The only thing I can say about it is I have played it a little bit where I got through the little tutorial mission, and then I think I did one mission, and I played it on emulator, and so I have a way of playing it, and it's cool. It's like almost like a simulation kind of game, I guess you can say, only with, Star Wars, where you're flying an X-Wing or other Star Wars spacecraft and all. And it's cool. The little bit that I played of it, it's one of the more nicer, I guess you can say, Nintendo 64 games. I did have some fun with it when I played the first mission and all. And so it's cool. I think it was like it's one of those games that comes out, the first entry it's not bad and all that, but then the next entry comes out on more powerful hardware that really elevates it further. So in this case, the Star Wars Rogue Squadron, Rogue Leader 2, I think is what it's called, the one on the GameCube that launched on the GameCube, that one is amazing, and I really enjoy that one. And it's just because the extra horsepower and all, I mean, really makes you feel more like a Star Wars game. It's just some games do benefit from extra horsepower, right? And that one for me is one that really did. It's definitely made you feel right like you were in one of those space aerial battles from the Star Wars movies. But for what it is, right, on the Nintendo 64, the first one, it does seem cool. So I don't think it'll get quite as epic as like the one on the GameCube did, but yeah, maybe I'll give it if I do end up playing these games, I'll give it a shot there and also see what it's all about and try to get a little bit further in it than what I did. I forgot why I played it, but I think I was just messing around with the emulator on the Nintendo 64, and because I hadn't really experienced that game, so I think I was just giving it a shot. But that was, I don't know, some years ago. But yeah, but other than that, don't have a whole lot of experience with it. But it is definitely like the perfect framework of how you can do a cool video game, right? I mean, the Star Wars aerial battles, space aerial battle scenes are amazing in the movies. So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that there's at least some decent games out there from that. And I really wish they would do another one though, like, on the Switch too. Like, hell yeah. That would be amazing. But, or at least if they can bring back the one on the GameCube, I mean, at least on the Nintendo Switch Online. But I've been reading a lot on how that emulator is a bit buggy and a bit laggy with the controls, and I don't think that'd be a good thing for the um, because the game is, where it's a very difficult game, and the last thing you need is for it to lag in any way. But either way, at the very least, bring it out on the Nintendo 64 because that's the one we're talking about here. And so I don't know, but getting the Star Wars license and all that, I'm sure it's not. Now that it's tied to Disney and all, I'm sure that's not cheap. But yeah, that's what I got though for Relay of Gaming. And so I maybe sometime this week, like I said, right, I'll try to, I don't want to say stream the games because I don't actually stream. I just point a camera to the TV, but I guess stream in quotation marks. Um, and then as far as for like modern gaming stuff, let's see. So I did beat Metal Gear Solid Delta, and I enjoyed my time with it. It's very much almost like a 1-on-1 to the original PlayStation 2 game, but that game still is so good. And as I was going through this one, there was a few moments where I did appreciate these new graphics, right? Because for the way the story was playing out and all. So like, for example, when Snake is getting tortured by Volgan, I thought that the improved graphics and all that really made that scene feel a little bit more brutal. The last boss fight scene too, also like the conversation you had before than the actual boss fight and all. Again, the graphics and I really felt lent more to the experience there. But but those are like the two moments, right? That I was like, oh, okay, that's cool because you can see like little extra details in the characters' faces, right? And also it seems like they were emoting a little bit more emotion and all to the already excellent acting that was already in place from years ago. But other than that, I mean, like I said, I would say, again, is this a good place to start? If you've never played Metal Gear Solid 3, I mean, if you're on the younger end, I would say yes, just because again, I think that the controls, I did enjoy the controls. It did make the game a little bit easy, like the last boss fight with the boss. I always had a little bit of a hard time with it on the the original version. This one, I beat it fairly easily, and that's because I hadn't played the game in a while. I was like, what do I do again? And it's like, oh right, it just seemed a lot more easier. But there's still a bit of a challenge though and all, and I think, for the most part, I think, more casual or newer video game players would appreciate the new remaster. I guess I'll call it a remaster game. But for anybody else and all, I mean, I wouldn't get, like, if you have an original copy of the PlayStation 2, don't get rid of that one, right? Play this one if you really love the game and you just want to see them flashier new graphics. Then yeah, sure, get the new one, right? I just wouldn't get rid of the old one because the old one is still definitely holds up well, and there is a certain different, again, because of the older graphics and all, it does give it a different tone to it in a sense. Just if you do get the new one, like I said, it's if you're not upset about it just being a 1-on-1, more or less game, then I think you'll find something to appreciate about it. Just know that it does have some performance issues and all that, right? It definitely shouldn't. And then, would you pay $70 for it? I mean, that's kind of up to you. I would say I'm a dumb enough, geek enough of the game and all that I did, but given how safe of a remaster it is and all, and again, I don't say that in a bad way, and then also because of the performance issues that it has on it, which I do think it's just, it really shouldn't have that, but it does, and so you might want to wait for it to go on sale and all. But that's just my thoughts on it. But yeah, like I said, I enjoyed my time with it though. Oh, and the other scene that I thought was really cool also when the Shadowheart is chasing you throughout the base. I thought that was really impressive too with the new graphics. The rain effects too also were really cool. Let's see. But the other thing too also is so something big happened this week, right? Which I think we were all kind of anticipating, but not to this extent. And that has to do with a little game called Hollow Knight Silksong. And wow, we just experienced like one of those generational video game moments, right? That happen every so often. And Silksong was it. It's basically what happened is that the game released on the 4th of September. And so they didn't send out review copies. They've been kind of tight-lipped about the whole release of the game. They just announced it like, what, 2 weeks ago or so, right? That it was coming out on the 4th of September. And so not a lot of lead up to it. There weren't review codes given out. So everybody's, people that are going to be reviewing the game and all that, they're going through the game still. I'm sure some people have beaten it already, but yeah, it just came out. But when it came out, it crashed a lot of the digital storefronts like Steam and the eShop. I want to say, I think I heard that it crashed the PlayStation store also. But it's just people were really anticipating this game. I was hearing that it could have taken like up to 2 hours for people to have downloaded it. And so I think that's, it's, and there's been a lot of controversy behind that also, because of how they priced the game and all that some people in the industry feel like it was too cheap and all that. I at the end of the day, I feel like this is a success story for video games, because this is a small team that were in a position to sell this game at that price because it was a game that was highly in demand. And I think that they earned that respect. And I think when it comes down to it, and I can only speak for myself, right? I consider myself a pretty nerdy gamer, considering that I play games a lot. I played a variety of games. I'm not by no means like an expert or anything like that on video games and all, as far as like my skill level and all that. But I have been gaming for a long time. It's one of the hobbies that I spend a lot of time in, right? When I have some free time and all. So as a self-proclaimed gamer, I guess, I feel like this is a good thing for the industry, because for me personally, Silk Song comes out at $20. I was very enticed to buy that, and I did end up buying it, and have a little story on that also. But it doesn't steer me away from buying another game that I am personally really interested in that might cost more. So for example, I was interested in buying Metal Gear Solid Delta because of my taste in games, what I personally like and all that, at the price of $70. So it didn't steer me away from buying that, even though I don't like that games are that high price and all that. But for me personally, that was a game that I really wanted to buy. Generally, I don't buy games at full price anymore, just because it is getting expensive. But if something is out there that I really don't want to buy, I will get it. Like Metal Gear Solid Delta. It was the first game that I've bought at the full price for quite a while. And it's just because, again, I love that series so much, right? And all that, I would have willing to spend that money for it. Silk Song comes out at $20. And so, yeah, that's very intriguing to me to buy it at that price, especially because it's a game that I do want to play at some point. But let's just say another game comes out that's along the lines of Silk Song. Let's just say like an indie Metroidvania game. And if it's something that it seems like it's something that I'm interested in and all that, but let's just say it comes out at $30. And it ends up being not quite as good as Silk Song. But if it's still a game that I am interested in, that I feel like it has enough elements about it that cater for me to want to buy it, I will still buy it. I will buy it at the $30 again, right? Then I'm just using this very loose example. So I don't think that Silk Song coming out at $20 is going to steer people away from it. And, and again, I'm only talking for myself. I know for me personally, it wouldn't. And so, if anything, at the end of the day, what I think we should be celebrating is it's a video game made by a very small team that has a very passionate fan base. I didn't know the Hollow Knight fan base was this big, but that it's basically a generational moment in video games of what happened, that a small little game like this made by 3, 4, 5 people or whatever is so much in demand that they got to make a game that the way they wanted it to make it, without a lot of corporate pressure and deadlines and all that, even though it took them a while to make it, right? But they made the game that they wanted to make, so they were able to take their time with it and all that, really make something special that was a labor of love. People were responding to it in droves. They were able to sell it at $20 because of the success that they had with their previous entry with Hollow Knight. And to the point that, again, it was crashing these digital storefronts. It's crazy. The game was like peaking at like over 500,000, something like that. And that's just on Steam. It's. I think it's amazing that a 2D game in this day and age can do that. And I think it just goes back to that. At the end of the day, we just want to play cool games. And if it resonates with us, if you're making a game that we can tell, because again, gamers know what we want, right? We know what we want. We know when something is made with love and care and all that, right? And all that we're gonna attach ourselves to that, and where there's where we're going to respect the creators for it and all that, and then we'll happily give over money. I think I saw this thing also where there was the piracy community, I guess that's a thing, but that they were even saying, right, and all that, that encouraging people to go buy this game, and so I think if anything, it just sends the video game industry that we just really want just quality games. Now, on the other end of that, though, I'm glad that Silksong is going to sell well. Then other games this year that come out kind of similar, like Expedition Claire Obscure Expedition 33, new IP sold for $50, right? Which was a very generous price, right? Because it is a big RPG and all that. But that those games are selling well. I'm glad for that. But on the other end, games like, because everything I'm just saying, right? Cool, yeah, it sounds great. But at the end of the day, games like Fortnite, Call of Duty, a lot of the EA sports games and all that. A lot of these games that have all these very kind of crude business practices are still selling really well, and that's at the end of the day what a lot of these big wigs and these companies and all are seeing, unfortunately, because that's where a lot of the money is, right? And unfortunately, though, on the other end, though, too, is that some of these games are just too big. And even if they do sell a lot, they end up failing and all. So I guess, short story long, I didn't mean to go off this much on it, is that the budgets of some of these games should really come into question and all, because I do like nice looking graphics and all that. I mean, it's definitely not the thing that I'm gravitating toward, but I can definitely appreciate when a game looks nice. Like, for example, Metal Gear Solid Delta, right outside of its performance issue, I was like, yeah, that looks really nice. But if it does come at the cost of like these budgets ballooning to a crazy amount where they have to sell a crazy amount of copies and they rush these games out and all, right, because they're trying to get as much money as possible and all that, if that's the trade-off of it, then I'd much rather see things that are more smaller scale and all that. Like, like again, Hollow Knight Silksong looks amazing for a 2D game. Claire Obscure Expedition 33, you can see kind of like the limits of its game structure and all that, because it's not like open world or anything like that and all, but it still looks gorgeous. I am fine if that's like the cap as far as like graphical prowess, right, that we're going to see. I'd be fine with that. I talked about it when I was playing the Pikmin game last week. I was like, I'm almost fine if we just went back to like 6th generation graphics, just clean things up, right? And all, maybe improve frame rates, resolution and all that. But, because again, if the, I do like, for example, like I love seeing Final Fantasy VII Remake and those fancy, awesome graphics, right? And I love it. I'm not going to say I don't. But as an industry as a whole, if it's coming to the point where, it's leading to a bunch of layoffs, a bunch of controversy, a bunch of ill will towards the customer and all, then I don't think that's a good trade-off. And I think we really need to reevaluate, like, what are we doing with video games as far as like technical advancements and all that, and maybe we should be focusing on, okay, let's just kind of where the graphics are at now, and then just focus on optimizing them more for better performance and all that, and how to scale them back a little bit so that the budgets aren't so crazy and all. But I don't know, that's just my thought on it and all, and I don't know if we'll ever get there, just because, again, it's a business, and however they see this the best way to make money, that's what they're going to go for. So I'm glad that Silksong is finding the success, but I don't, will it change the industry and all? Probably not. I don't see that happening, and and I don't think it's going to crash the video game industry also either. I mean, I think that there might be some more layoffs and things like that still to come, unfortunately, with some companies still kind of following this live service kind of model, right, and all. But I'm just glad that at the very least these things are happening. So I think this should be an encouragement to a lot of the developers that are out there that are still wanting to make games from the heart, and because we still need those games. We love those games, and we'll be there to support them too. If it's a good game and if it's fairly priced, I mean, we will support it. But anyways, just wanted it was a crazy story that happened, and so I did end up buying it. I'm still going through Hollow Knight, which I'm going to talk about that a little bit too, also. But I did end up buying it, but I wasn't able to buy it until a little bit later. So by the time it was on the 5th that I downloaded it, and I didn't have any issues with downloading the game at the time. But I was like, yeah, $20. I was like, yeah, I'm going to play it. I was like, I'm not going to play it right now, because I want to play the first one, but I'll go and get it downloaded. But I got it on the Switch too. And I forgot that I had a gift card credit on there. Not a whole lot, but I had like $6 and something. So ultimately, I ended up buying it for just $13.37. Excuse me, I think was my final checkout price. So I was like, oh, sweet. Okay, well, that works. But yeah, I haven't tested it out yet and all. And the reason for that is because I was kind of thinking of playing it right first. But what happened, though, was last week, I started playing Hollow Knight a little bit more. And I'm really getting into the game now. I got the Hollow Knight bug, and I was starting to like it. Right, I'm progressing a little bit further in it because there is a lot of like sort of like mindless wandering I get, but that's kind of the fun of it. It's almost like Breath of the Wild in a 2D sense, where you're just kind of wandering around, and all that. So you have to go into it knowing that. So there's a few. So I am by no means a good Hollow Knight player. I am not an expert on it, and I'm not too far in it. I'm like maybe 5 hours and a half in it, give or take. But so if you're thinking about getting into Hollow Knight, but you've been put off by it, or maybe you tried it like the way I did before and was kind of like, I don't know if this is for me. Here's a few tips, right? Just to try to get you into the game, right? First and foremost, it's a game that you have to try to go into, not like every Metroidvania, right? Where you have a map and it kind of outlines more or less where you can go and all that. I think Silksong does a little bit of a better job at doing that from what I've seen in some of the people talking about it. But Hollow Knight is not going to be as friendly with that. So my first suggestion is when you get to the first city, there's a little shop there. Buy the compass and some of the things that are on there, right, that put certain markers down on the map, like the quill, I think also the paper and quill, and the compass, because that's going to give you more of the standard Metroidvania experience, right, where you pull up a map and you can see where you're at. So you have to grind a little bit for that, but it's not too bad. Some of the enemies within near vicinity, just grind for a little bit and you'll be fine. There's also kind of close to where that city's at, there's like this weird sort of like, I don't know, like a mound of some sort where there's like these worms that come out. Visit that every so often because they will give you the worms will give you like what's called, I forgot what they're called, but it's like this game's version of money basically. And there's and the more worms you collect, they're kind of like hidden collectibles in the game, the more money you'll get. There's a worm that's kind of off, I'll just say from where the city's at, kind of start going towards the the right end of the map, and you'll find another worm there so find that first also, and then that way you'll get more money from this kind of weird looking mound thing right in where these worms are at. So that way you can, so the grinding won't be too bad. And even then, even without that, it's not that bad. So take the time to do that at first. The second thing is yes, you're going to get lost a little bit in it, right? That's kind of the point of the game though. So just, if don't play this, if you want to play a game that you're kind of rushing through it, or, unless you're a speedrunner, right? But if you're not, again, just enjoy the experience, right? Enjoy that you're going to kind of get lost in it a little bit and enjoy that. So, kind of get lost in it, literally and figuratively. And the other thing too is slow down when you're fighting the bosses or the enemies. Okay. I know that sounds weird, and it almost sounds like kind of like this yoga, sort of like, wax on, wax off, slow things down, and all that. The reason I say that, it sounds weird, but it's like, this is, I started realizing why this game is so popular for a lot of people. So I've talked before about, well, at least on my, YouTube channel and all that, that there's two games that I really like for the mechanics of it, right? And all it's fighting games. It's going to be weird that I'm going to compare this to a fighting game, but just if you can follow, stay with me here for a bit. So two of my favorite video games of all time is Virtua Fighter 5, or really the Virtua Fighter series, but Virtua Fighter 5 and Street Fighter Alpha 3. And again, most of the Street Fighter games and all, but those two in specific. The reason I like those games a lot is because they're the fighting games that I feel that really get it down well, that the controls and the mechanics of the game are so tight, so precise, that if it gives you the tools that are simple to learn, hard to master, so to speak. Well, unless you're using Akira on Virtua Fighter 5, that guy's, or Akira just in any Virtua Fighter game, he's kind of crazy hard to use. But anyways, aside from that, right, it gives you the tools, but it's easier to learn, hard to master. And so as you're, going through, fighting the opponents, if you lose, it really feels like you're losing because it's on you, right? Like you didn't put in the correct input in time, or so it's a testament of your skill level, right? And all, as far as why you lost. So then the addicting nature of those games is that it wants you to learn the mechanics so you can get better, because then it becomes kind of a rush, right? And all, when you get the mechanics down and all that. So you have to be immersed in it, right? You have to be engaged in it, right? You can't just sort of half-ass play it if you really want to get good at it. That's why I like those games a lot. So what I mean by that, by Hollow Knight, is that the way that your character controls is kind of the same thing with the jumping on it, the platforming, the sword slash that you can do, how you can slash up, down, left, right, and all, and how you traverse through the levels. It's very precise. The platforming in this game is definitely some of the best that I've ever experienced. It's very precise. And it's the range of the sword seems a little limited at first, but it's all done within the construct of this game to help you succeed. And if you learn its mechanics and all that, right, to, as the kids say nowadays, get good. And so it gives you the tools to do that, right? And also then it's just a matter of you being really immersed and engaged in it as you're fighting these enemies, because these enemies can be a little relentless. And so I say this, so like I fought one boss. It wasn't too terribly hard. He's kind of like a big dude, has like a little baby face with his helmet comes off and all. He wasn't too bad. But then I get to this boss where I guess it's the main character from the Silk Song. She's got like this weird sort of kind of like oval horn shaped head with the red gown and black little leggings, what it seems like, and like a needle for a weapon. So, as far as I can tell, it's the main character from the Silk Song, and her name is Hornet. And so she's a boss in this game. And so I got to her, I'm like, oh shit, I'm fighting the main character, I guess, from the first one. And because the story's very vague, it doesn't really tell you too much. So I'm fighting her, and I'm getting my ass kicked. I'm like, okay. I was like, okay, this is hard. I was like, okay. And so right there, right after like about 3 or 4 attempts, I was like, how in the hell am I supposed to beat this character? She's too fast. It's the patterns. Like it's kind of hard to keep up with, like, what exactly is she doing, right? To try to memorize her patterns. So then I was like, okay, I'm getting my butt kicked so many times. And so this is what ends up happening in a lot of Dark Souls games, where I'm like, I'm not fast enough. I'm not quick enough. I can't. And then I just kind of like, the hell with this game. And I'm sure that happens with a lot of people that try to get into Dark Souls games, or like something like Hollow Knight. So, and I was starting to get a little frustrated, right? But then I was like, you know what? Let's just keep playing it. Let's just keep playing it and playing it. I'm going to die a lot. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to die a lot. Let me just, instead of just trying to like panic attack her or panic heal and all that, let me just kind of wait a bit, just try to study her a little bit and kind of move with her, dance with her almost in a way. And I swear, I know it almost seems like bullshit, but I fought her the first time like that, right? I'm just kind of like trying to study her moves, and I'm not really trying to like aggressively attack her. I'm playing a little bit more defensive, and like I ended up dying like 2 times, but I got a little bit further. And then like the 3rd time, I ended up beating her. And so I guess my point is that just slow it down a little bit from when you're playing, right? Don't just try to go panic attacking these bosses and all that. Just try to learn their moves and all. Know you're probably going to die a few times. Be engaged with it though and all, because again, the controls are pretty tight and responsive, that they're going to let you go with the flow of it and all, because again, it's easy to learn. The hard to master part of it is your responsive time and all that. And, and so that you are able to get to the point where you're able to just kind of I don't know, it's almost like a dance almost, right? But where your skill level improves, where you can end up coming out successful. So I ended up beating her, right? And I was like, oh, that is pretty cool. And so then I got a little bit of a rush that that I was able to beat her and all that. And so then I just keep going and going in the game now. Now, all that to say that I'm stuck on another boss right now. But again, that's just a few tips and all that have really helped me get engaged in this game. Is that's part of the experience of it and all that you are gonna die a lot, right? And you just have to kind of go with it. Having said that, though, there is a bit of a complaint that I do have, which is, and it's that the save benches where you can, save your game at, they're a little, sometimes they can be a little far away, right, from a really tough battle. And so, like, for example, the boss that I keep dying on right now, it's not too far, but it's a little bit of a trek to get to this boss. Or it's not even a boss, it's like these two enemies that are like, but anyways, and so it is a bit of a pain, right? So that is something that, again, can turn people off and all. So, but again, part of it though is that maybe you don't need to go to this boss. Maybe I can go somewhere else and maybe find something else that's going to give me more strength, like a charm that they have where it gives you like certain abilities that will help me improve it. Because that's actually what I'm thinking of doing now, since I'm kind of getting my butt kicked by this boss. But anyway, that's just a bit of advice if you do want to get into it. Having said all that, either also, it might just not be for you, right? And that's perfectly fine. I mean, I know I played several games where I've like the Dark Souls games, for example. I haven't quite given up on them yet, but I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to think that they're just not for me. Elden Ring is an exception, though. I feel like I can still get into that one, and that's perfectly fine, and all. It's not everything is meant for everyone, and that is perfectly okay. Would I like to see a bit more of user-friendly options on Hollow Knight? Yeah, but I also feel like if that's the case, you're losing out on the core audience of what the game is intended for, which is obviously a very passionate fan base, and I wouldn't want to go against that, right? And all, because again, not everything is meant for everyone. But like I said, I did catch the Hollow Knight bug and all, and I definitely want to keep playing it and all. And so until I hopefully eventually end up beating it, although I feel like some of these later bosses are, oh my gosh, they're going to kick my ass, but that's okay. But yeah, anyways, just a little bit of advice there on that. But okay, let's get into now for 1984. And so, I mean, there was definitely stuff that happened, but a bit of a slower year, kind of, in a sense. Because again, we had the video game crash of 1983 and all. And so the industry, I'm sure, was still kind of suffering some effects of that, but there was still stuff coming out, though, for sure. I mean, it's not like, everything just came to a halt. But let's go over a few things here, though. So again, I'm just reading this again from Wikipedia, so I don't know how accurate some of this stuff is. But so let's see, 1984 saw many sequels and prequels along with new titles, such as 1942, Boulder Dash, Cobra Command, Jet Set Willy. I was like, Jet Set Radio, what? Karate Champ, Kung Fu Master, Yi Air Kung Fu, and Punch Out. The year's highest grossing arcade games were pole position in the United States for the second year in a row, and Track and Field in the United Kingdom. The year's best-selling home console was Nintendo's Family Computer, or the Famicom, which was only sold in Japan at that time. In the United States, home video game sales fall to 800 million, or 2.4 billion adjusted for inflation. Wow, so that was a bit of a drop-off from what they had like just last year. Let's see, but the highest grossing arcade games, in Japan, let's see, for like the table arcade cabinets. So in January was Hyper Olympic, February was 10-Yard Fight, March and April was Versus Tennis, May was Gapless, June was Versus Baseball, July was Crowns Golf, August was Karate Champ, September Jano, October Night Gal, November Jano, and then December Night Gal. And then for upright cabinets, TX1 was the number one for January, February, March, and April. And then for May, June, July, and August, it was Thunderstorm or Cobra Command. And then in September, October, November was TX1 V8. And then in December, it was Super Don Hijoten. For the United States, or I'm sorry, United Kingdoms and United States. Let's see. Well, I'll go with because it looks like for the United Kingdom, it just shows number one was track and field, and then after that, it just says unknown. But let's see, for United States, so it looks like for, let's see. For at number one was pole position. And then 2, 3, 4, and 5 was they just have track and field, Spy Hunter, Mach 3, and Punch Out all kind of lumped together. And then after that, kind of unknown. The best-selling home systems. So number one, and again, this is only in Japan though, but it was a family computer, or the Famicom from Nintendo. So at the time, it had sold 2,940,000. And again, that's all in Japan. Number two was the Commodore 64, which was at 2,500,000. And then number three was the IBM personal computer at 2 million. And then at number four was the TI 99/4A, which was at 100 million. Number five was Apple II, also showing at 100 million. Number six was the PC 88 or PC 98, which was at 470,000. And then number seven was the Mac at 370,000. Number 8 was the MSX at 350,000. Number 9 was Atom from Coleco, and that was 255,000. And then at number 10 was the SG-1000 from my beloved Sega, with 240,000 plus. Let's see. So just a major award. So the 5th Arcade Awards were held for games releasing during 1982 and 1983. Pole Position wins Coin Up Game of the Year. Miss Pac-Man and Ladybug win Console Video Game of the Year. Lode Runner wins Computer Game of the Year. And Qbert wins Dedicated Standalone Game of the Year. Let's see. And then just for hardware, so on January 24th, Apple Inc. announces the original 128K floppy disk only Macintosh 128K. In March, IBM releases the IBM PC JR in an attempt to enter the home computer market. It has improved sound and graphics over the original business-oriented IBM PC, but it's a commercial failure. Oh. And then Atari announces the Atari 7800, a next-generation console that's compatible with Atari 2600 cartridges, but capable of greatly improved visuals. It is shelved until 1986 due to the sales of the company and legal issues. So the Atari 5200 really didn't do anything, because below that, it says discontinued systems, Atari 5200. Oh, the Magnavox Odyssey 2 got discontinued. And the Vectrex. So my theory, because the Magnavox Odyssey 2 was the first system that we got. And again, all my dad remembers is that, or at least what he's told me, is that he picked it up at the mall one day. But that would have been... I don't think it... I mean, I don't... Because I want to say that when I was playing the Magnavox Odyssey 2... the Nintendo was already out. So the Nintendo didn't come out in the States in 1985. Because I want to say that I think, like, I was already hearing some of my friends having a Nintendo. But again, we got the Magnavox Odyssey 2. So, again, I'm thinking 1985 was around the time that he bought it, give or take. And so it had already been discontinued then, according to this. So again, my thought is that he probably just saw it might have been like on a discounted bin or something like that. But then another system too also was a Vectrex that was discontinued that year. And so let's go through some video games here that came out in this year. At the end of the day, that's kind of what, we play games for. But one of the more bigger releases of this year was Marble Madness. It's a fun kind of game. I've played a little bit of it before on the original Nintendo. It's hard, but it's fun. But that game was co-programmed by Mark Cerny. And so Mark Cerny, he's been pretty big figure in the video game industry, even to this day. what I remember hearing his name, that he was somehow attached to like, I could be wrong on this, but and maybe we'll learn more about it as I get into the later years. But I think he was involved somehow with like Naughty Dog when they were doing their Jack and Daxter games, and then also Insomniac games with the Ratchet and Clank games back on the PlayStation 2. At least I think that's when I started hearing about him first. Well, he eventually ended up spearheading the development of the PlayStation 4, and later on, and I think also eventually the PlayStation 5 and the 5 Pro. I mean, he was a dude in the commercial for the PlayStation 5, or not the commercial, but the announcement that they made for him. So he's been involved with Sony as far as like the development of like their hardware, software and hardware, right, for some time. But it looks like this is where he was first getting to start in. I don't know if it was his first game, but he was involved with that Marble Madness game. So pretty smart dude, I guess, all things considered. And then, so Warner Communications sells Atari to Jack Tramiel. And so, I don't know if I don't recall if I talked about this in the previous episodes, or this might have maybe happened in the 70s, but Warner Communications somehow got involved with Atari. After the crash, they ended up selling it to this Jack Tramiel guy. And so Jack Tramiel and his family, I read a book called it was like the Video Game History something book, and it goes into a little bit more detail there with this family here. But it looks like they were pretty cutthroat from what it sounds like as far as like business wise, and so they fired a lot of people, and also, I mean, for better or worse and all that, they were trying to get Atari back on track, I guess. But it seems like he was a pretty tough businessman, and ultimately Atari still exists to this day. They're just they just weren't quite the powerhouse that they were before. There was a game called Star Force that came out that started helping establish kind of what shoot 'em ups would become. More like starting off with kind of like more of the top down point of view, where the level of scrolling now and all, instead of just like Space Invaders, right, and always just the one screen, and then you're just shooting up, right, and enemies coming down at you, but the screen doesn't scroll. And so it looks like it was kind of one of the more first shooters that started that, where again, the screen is scrolling up. That, and like something like 1942 as well too, from Capcom. And then there was Paperboy, which was a pretty popular game back in the day, where you're just, delivering paper to your neighborhood. Did I ever play this game? I think I did at some point. I just remember it was really popular. It was all over the place. It seemed like every system was getting a port of it to some extent. Lode Runner. It was a really popular game on the computer systems back then, apparently. I don't know a whole lot about it. It just looks like it had a lot of levels, but yeah, other than that, I don't know a whole lot about it. But then also Nintendo started getting some games out there that were starting to become pretty popular. So like Duck Hunt in the arcades, Hogan's Alley, and both of them used a light gun, and then also Punch Out. So this version of Punch Out, it's actually graphically pretty impressive, and I think you can get it on the Nintendo Switch also. Maybe I'll get it just to have it, just to look at it, and see what it's all about back then. But like the main character, so he's like a wireframe, and also you can still see through. And the graphics were more in the style of what would later come out as a Super Punch Out on the Super Nintendo later. So the graphics were pretty impressive on it, because the one that came out on the Nintendo was different looking, right? But we'll get into that one later. But Punch Out on the arcades, it looked pretty impressive though. But speaking of wireframe, there was also it looks like it was some kind of a shooter called Elite, and it had like these wireframe graphics, like for a 3D effect that, back then was pretty cool. And then we had a game like Karate Champ. So Karate Champ, I do remember playing this one in the arcades and all, and I always thought it was, I always like playing it just to hear the sound effects. I don't know if they were talking in Japanese or what, but just like their grunts are like, hoogie, hooya, hoogie hee, hooga, hooga. And then when you get hit, it's like, you just hear like the smack sound when you get knocked out. I used to like playing that game, and it was you control it with two joysticks though, and it's so you use a combination of like how you move the joysticks to perform certain moves. So it was a very technical, precise, and difficult game. And but I used to like playing it back then, even though I would get my butt kicked all the time in it. But if I remember right, I think around the arcade cabinet, it would give you like the moves that you can do with on how you move the joystick. But And then also I remember it as well too, because it was in the movie Bloodsport that I used to like watching as a kid a lot too. Pinball machines were kind of a big deal still here, back in those days. That's something I haven't really touched base on too much, but yeah, pinball machines were still the rage, going even further back, even further past the 70s, if I recall, from what I read in that video game history book, and even to this day. And so they would have like a lot of big names, like of certain franchises, right, and all on these pinball machines, like for example, Spy Hunter, and I think I heard Dragon's Lair had a pinball machine. But yeah, they were so popular. I mean, I remember seeing them in the arcade all the time. I never really messed around with too much with them, but yeah, I mean, they were a big thing. Um, and then there was still like, the way video games were starting to inspire pop culture just in general, right? Like for example, movies was still a big deal. So there was, for example, there was a Star Wars Return of the Jedi video game that came out. And because the previous one that I think I talked about in the last episode was, this kind of big deal. Star Wars, big name now, right? Now we got the third movie out in this, classic trilogy of movies, right? And so there was a video game based off of that looked like was pretty popular. And then there was also a movie called The Last Starfighter. And I don't know if there was a video game made from this movie, but the movie itself had some inspiration from video games, though, where you're playing a video game and then it's like a space shooter of some sort, and then this alien race or something like that take you as one of their fighters, or I don't know. I could be getting the plot completely wrong. All I know is that it was inspired by like video games to an extent, right? I remember watching the movie as a kid, but I haven't seen it in so long. I kind of lost sight of what the premises of it. But again, it was because it was inspired by video games. So kind of like the year before that, Tron, right? And so just kind of started showing, right, that video games were starting to, even though we had the video game crash and all that, it was starting to infiltrate, pop culture and all that. And because I think people really still like the idea of video games and all, because it was entertaining, and then also I'm sure financially as well. But then we also get King's Quest, which was like this adventure game, I believe, by Sierra. And King's Quest, I do remember playing this, and I do remember liking it a lot. And where did I play it? I want to say, so my friend that had the Nintendo. So this friend, him and his family, they were, as far as I know, at least, they had a pretty big house and a lot of stuff. And also, I feel like they were pretty well off. And I think where we played this game was, in the area where we would play the Nintendo was downstairs in this kind of den area that they had. And so they had a decent, at least for the time, a decent sized TV. They had the Nintendo hooked up there. And so me and my friend would sit in front of the TV and play video games there. But his dad had an office close by also. And so every now and then we would go in this office. And I remember playing Karnov there quite a bit. That side-scrolling game where you're like this Russian dude that shoots fire from his mouth. But I think that's also where we played this King's Quest game. Because I remember playing this game a lot. I just don't recall quite how. But I just like the concept of, you're on this adventure, trying to figure things out. And so what I recall of it and all, I really enjoyed it. So it's a game that I want to try to play at some point again, and all, just if anything, just for the memories. I know there's a version on the Sega Master System, so maybe that's the version I'll try playing. But speaking of Sega, Flicky from Sega also came out this year. It's a game where you're a bird trying to save her chickies from cats, I believe. It's a kind of a fun game. And then there was some game, I just saw a little bit about it, and it was called Drug Wars. I don't really know what the game is about, but it looks like it's kind of one of those text adventures and all. But from the screenshots that I saw, it looks like you're dealing in drugs, because it said had like the prices of like cocaine and heroin and things like that. And I was like, what? So I don't really know what it's about and all that, but I'm sure it was probably controversial at the time and all. But kind of curious if there's a way to play it, because I'm curious to see what that game's all about. And then we also had some Laserdisc games still here, so they were becoming kind of popular still. So we had Cobra Command, which eventually, I know this game because it came out on the Sega CD eventually, but apparently it came out all the way back then. So it's like one of those Laserdisc interactive games, and you're a helicopter in this one and just blowing up the enemy, apparently. But the one that I really remember, or two of them, I should say, is Space Ace by Don Bluth also. So I would assume the studio that did the Dragon's Lair from the previous year, and Super Don Quixote. Now, these games, again, just like Dragon's Lair and all, I really enjoyed watching them. My brother would play them quite a bit, and I just always remember just standing behind him, watching them as he would play them in the arcades. And he actually, if I recall right, he did okay. He must have burned through a lot of quarters, so I'm sure my parents probably weren't too happy with that, but he was pretty decent at it, and also, and for me, it was just watching like a free cartoon, right? And because I just loved the animation on them and all, and really creative. The characters were really cool. With what's his name, Dexter, and the girl that he's trying to save, and the whole space adventure against the oddly named Borf villain in it. But I think he did beat it, because I remember I thought it was funny that at the end, when beat the last, Borf, where he turns into like a little baby. I always thought that, because I remember seeing that as a kid, so he must have beat it. But the one that I really remember a lot, and I wish they would have released it to play on modern consoles, is Super Don Quixote. And so this game was from Universal, and from what I saw on the release dates, it came out in Europe and in Japan in late 1984, and then in the United States in 1985. But we'll talk about it here. And so kind of in the lines of, again, the same kind of style, right? It's you're pressing certain button or joystick prompts that as they appear on the screen so that you can advance in the game. But it's just the animation and all that just really, I really liked. And I remember liking the music a lot too. And it's like the same theme that plays over and over and over. But I just remember really liking it. And then as you beat certain segments, the evil witch at the end, she's like, yeah, right. Gives like this weird screech. I just thought it was kind of funny. Yeah, just it was. I mean, all of these games are basically like the hero / prince or whatever, right? Trying to save the queen or princess or damsel in distress and all. It was. I love the animation to him, very 80s style and all, and so definitely some of the more memorable experiences that I remember having in the arcades, even if I wasn't specifically partaking in them, but just watching my brother play through them. But yeah, that's a lot from what I have here on 1984. And then let's see, I just have a list here of like just video games that came out during this time. So maybe some other ones that I might have missed here, but looks like there was so there was some Nintendo games that were starting to become popular, because again, the Famicom was out in Japan, and then in the arcades as well too. But like games like let's see, I don't know if some of these came out in the arcades or not, but I already talked about Hogan's Alley, Tennis, Clu Clu Land. I think Ice Climbers also was on there. But so Nintendo, they're starting to infiltrate the market. There was a Gremlins game apparently also. An Indiana Jones game. What was this called? Let's see. Indiana Jones in the Lost Kingdom. Okay. Tetris apparently came out in 1984 also. Oh, wait. Tetris is the puzzle game created in 1985. So why is it listed here in 1984? Well, I'm not going to claim that one for sure if it came out in 1984 then. Another game that came out that I saw a little bit about it, but it was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It seemed like it was some kind of a funny one of those text adventure games from what I recall, or what I saw of it. And let's see, there was also Pac-Land. Let's see what else here. Sorry, I had to put it on pause there. My other daughter comes in and she's talking about wanted to see if I can get an Aurora, something about a cake with fruit in it. I'm like, let's see. Maybe I'll Google it and see what she's talking about. And I don't know, might be a fun treat to have today. But okay, I'm kind of curious. What is this Jet Set Willie? Because when I looked at it, I was like, is this kind of where Jet Set Radio got its inspiration from? Let's see. Jet Set Willie is a platform video game written by Matthew Smith for the ZX Spectrum home computer. It was published in March of 1984 by Software Projects and ported to most home computers at the time. All right, that's an interesting box art. Yeah, nothing like Jet Set Radio. So I guess just just a coincidence, I guess. I don't know, just when I saw that, I thought it was kind of funny. And but yeah, so I would say, I mean, just at a glance here and all, I mean, it looks like the video game industry was making, strides and all that, right? To continue to improve technology, video games and all that. Because games are starting to now look with more detail in the sprites and all. Because we went from very like basic looking sprites to now things that we ended up getting more used to was say like stuff from on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and then also in the arcades, the graphics were starting to improve a lot more, right? Because now we're getting more colorful, bigger sprites and all that, and so things we're starting to look a little bit more impressive, which I'm sure we're going to see more of that come next year. But Excite Bike looks like Excite Bike came out also on the Nintendo. Huh. But yeah, but I would say kind of a slower year. At least for me personally, from what I can see here and all. And but looks like, yeah, I mean, just going from the sales and all that, looks like the video game industry did take a bit of a hit, right? With that crash that happened. But if I was to pick a game of the year for this year, let's see. So just kind of going back a little bit, because I think I forgot to mention them on some of the previous years. So 1980 was Pac-Man, and this is just for me personally. 1981 was Tempest. 1982 for me was Dig Dug. No, yeah, 1982. Then 1983 was Dragon's Lair for me. In 1984, I originally had King's Quest in there because I do remember liking what I played of that game back in the day and all. But I mean, if Tetris did come out in this year, then it would be Tetris. But because I can't quite tell if it did or not, I'm not gonna put it there. But is it still King's Quest? Would that still have been my favorite game of this year? I'm going to say yes, just from what I'm seeing here. I mean, I could pick Super Don Quixote is probably the one that I have more nostalgia for, but I didn't really play it back then. And, and again, it was just more of a Laserdisc interactive game, right? And all, which I mean, I know I still give it to Dragon's Lair the previous year, but now it's just different kind of competition this year and all. I'm going to go with King's Quest for this year. But yeah, that's what I got for 1984. And so next year, obviously, we'll be going into 1985 and see what that year brings, because that's also when the Nintendo Entertainment System comes out in the United States. I'm pretty sure, right? 1985. But we'll learn about it more next time. But yeah, hope you have an amazing day. The weather here where I'm at, it's pretty decent, but we've had a lot of smoke in the air, so it's been making me feel a little sick. But it looks like that's kind of an issue going on all over the United States. And I was kind of complaining about it a little bit the other day just because it was making me feel a little drowsy and all. But then I started to think, I was like, yeah, but that's not the tragedy. The tragedy is, all the, unfortunately, all the damage that it's causing and all that. And, thoughts go out to like all the firefighters out there trying to put a stop to all this and all, because yeah, apparently there's a lot of smoke. I don't think it's all in the United States. I think it's maybe like in Canada also, from I think what I saw, but there seems to be like this big old blanket of smoke going over the United States. But yeah, hopefully all that gets resolved here soon. But yeah, have an amazing day and see you on the next one.